Hi, everyone. Welcome to Business Fights. I really hope everyone is having a good Wednesday so far. I'm really excited to see everyone joining us today for another great speaker discussion. And for those of you who may not know, my name is Kayla and I am with HanaHaus in Palo Alto. So, if any of you are from the Bay Area and ever go into our Palo Alto location, please feel free to say hi. And as a quick background, so Business Bites is a collaborative virtual series hosted by On Its Access and HanaHaus. And if you're not familiar, On Its Access is an innovation consulting firm based in Southern California, and HanaHaus is a flexible co-working space and cafe with locations in both Palo Alto and Newport Beach. So what's really cool about HanaHaus is that our workspace is really open to anyone that wants to use it. We have absolutely no membership costs or long-term commitment, and instead we offer pay by the hour workspace reservations. So, it's really flexible, it's super versatile, and it really can be used on an as-needed basis, which is very unique in the co-working world. So today, I do encourage you all to use the chat feature at the bottom to engage and ask any questions throughout the session. And as a reminder, this session is being recorded and will be posted on our YouTube channel and also sent out via email. So, maybe if you had a friend who couldn't attend or if you had to leave the session early, it'll be up on YouTube so you won't miss a single thing. And with that, I would like to hand it back over to Kelly from On Its Access.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you to all of our speakers for joining today. We are incredibly fortunate to have three remarkable successful startup founders. I really should include four, but Laurel, today I'm giving you your VC hat in addition to that startup founder hat. As so many of us today, we wear many hats. And so today I'm joining you in my role as an executive at On Its Access, the innovation consulting firm, but I'll also be speaking and working as the moderator for today's conversation from the perspective of my managing partner of 360 Venture Collective hat, which is my VC hat. On Its Access has been accelerating intrapreneurs and entrepreneurs for a long time. And I'm thrilled to also be in a position now to fund startup founders as part of that 360 team. So with that said, let's talk to the real successful leadership team here, which is the founder team that we have live joining us for today's conversation. I'll begin today by asking Chen, if you could begin, please share with our audience a bit about your professional background and your connection to today's topic.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chen Levanon. I'm currently the founder and CEO of Zibaz. Zibaz is my fourth startup, but let's just go a little bit about my background. I was a professional athlete, came to the States. Then I did investment banking, so a lot of finance background in the Wall Street. And then in 2012, I started my first business. It was in the mobile space. After it was self-funded, we reached $20 million in less than 3 years. It was a very successful one. After almost 5 years, we sold it to a publicly traded company in London. Then I started another business, similar tech. It's a B2B, big data, worked with all the big names. And recently we sold it to SimilarWeb before its IPO. And now I'm building Zibaz, which is a digital platform for teenagers to manage their businesses from A to Z from the early age of 13. They can sell their services, their items, they can send payment requests, invoices, they have a digital wallet. Basically, we want to change the world for the teenagers to become an entrepreneur from an early age of 13.
Thank you so much, Chen. Tanya, I'll come to you next. If you could share with our audience a bit about your professional background.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Tanya Menendez, co-founder and CEO at Snowball Wealth. Snowball Wealth is a mobile app that helps people get out of debt and start investing, mostly through community and AI-driven planning. And this is my third company. So I started my career at Goldman Sachs. I then started a leather goods business while I was in New York. Got that into Nordstrom, Henry Bendel's, a bunch of stores and boutiques. And then I used that experience to start my first tech company, which was a marketplace for American factories. I grew that business to 200,000 businesses sourcing through the platform and 11,000 factories. And after 5 years, I was really excited to start something new again. So that business is still going, and I've always been passionate about the wealth gap, and I see it as one of the biggest social issues facing our generation today. And particularly the wealth gap with like women and underrepresented groups, and really anyone that doesn't grow up in wealth, right? Like it's very difficult to understand what it takes to start investing. And so that's where Snowball comes in. And it's so yeah, check out Snowball Wealth in the App Store.
Thank you so much. And Ryan, I'll come to you next.
Cool, thanks, Kelly. Ryan Disraeli. In my kind of previous role, I was the founder of a company called Telesign. Which you may not know the name, but you've probably used our services anytime you get a two-factor authentication code when you log into Google, Facebook, Yahoo, Microsoft. We were the early pioneers in that category. And it was I like to joke, like a 10-year plus overnight success. And we sold the business actually in 2018. I stayed on and helped grow the business to about 300 million in revenue. Took a year off and then joined Inspective as CEO. And we're also in the cybersecurity category, but focused on vulnerability detection. So similar broad category, but a different focus. And going back to an earlier stage, which is my passion. So post Series A now and just focused on growth and building an awesome company.
And last and certainly not least, Laurel, if you could share a bit about your background.
Sure. So happy to be here. Thank you for having me, Kelly. I was actually a corporate M&A attorney when I started my career. The universe had a different plan for me. My dad ended up getting sick. He's healthy now, but I had to step down from my firm to run his interest in a huge national brand called Bassett Furniture, which some of you may or may not know. So I was interim CEO there for 3 years at 26. Did I have any clue what I was doing? Absolutely not. But it was school of hard knocks, and I learned by doing. He stepped back in. I went back after those law firm jobs and was like, those experiences where you're like viscerally and physically nauseous when someone offers you something that you should be really excited about. That was my experience about going back to law. I was like, I'm not doing that. My MBA is in marketing, started schmoozing and boozing with other entrepreneurs. All their pain points were around digital. And so I launched my first company, Elevate My Brand, in 2008. It's still very much active and operational. We are 100% diverse on that side of the business. Because of my legal background, we also do a lot of work with private equity and venture. And at the end of last year, one of the venture partners asked me to stay on and said, why the hell aren't you raising your own fund? You're super mission driven. You have high net worth connectivity. You know how to make these companies winners. Go build a fund. And honestly, it was like I took the blue pill, the matrix unfolded, and I was like, yes, this is exactly what the next iteration of my business career is going to look like. And thus, Fabric VC was born. So we were only investing in diverse run companies. So only queer, BIPOC, and female-led brands, mostly in consumer and consumer tech.
Thank you so much. If you're listening in live with us, you know why I'm so excited about today's conversation, just from those introductions. Let's take a minute back. Each of you shared incredible track records that we could probably spend hours talking to each of you about. But if you think at the start of that entrepreneurial journey, what led you to begin it? And Laurel, I'll come to you first, since you started to share a little bit about this path. What inspired you to begin your entrepreneurial journey, and how do you stay inspired today?
Yeah, mine was actually by accident, but I don't believe there are really any true accidents in this world. Everything is connected and everything happens as it should. So I was on this very linear corner office, partner track, and the universe had a different experience and opportunity for me. So my journey actually started out with me fighting tooth and nail against it, because I was like, this is not what I've built my career to do. I'm supposed to be a lawyer. I'm supposed to be in this corner office. All of the shoulding all over ourselves that we all have a very big tendency to do. But once I started digging in and actually leading a team and understanding all of the nuances around launching and running a successful multi-million-dollar company, that was where I got excited. And I could tell I have this very strange, I'm going to share all the secrets with you all today. I have this very strange visceral reaction when I know something is a right fit. And it's really weird. The backs of my knees actually start to sweat. It's a very strange, like visceral experience that I have when I know something is the right path for me. And I felt that energetically when I was running my father's company. Now it was in distress at the time, so that was its own like whole wild experience. But that was really what taught me that I work so well under pressure, but not just that. I love and I'm inspired every day by building teams and making real change in the world. So as I mentioned before, Elevate is 100% diverse. I've always double clicked into that conversation and spoken on women's rights and empowerment and all of that. But fabric is how we're going to create more equity in a space that, as most of you all know, is very pale, male, and stale. And that's really what inspires me to continue on with my mission.
Thank you so much for that, Laurel. Tanya, I'm going to come to you, and maybe if we can go back in time to you launching the leather goods company. What inspired you to step out into that entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah, you know what? I initially started my entrepreneurial journey really because as a creative outlet. I loved at the time, the leather goods company was all made in New York. So I loved the feeling of magic of like being able to come up with a concept, design it, take it to a factory, have it made, kind of made to order, and then seeing people wearing it on the subway felt like, you know, you're contributing and adding to the world in a way and supporting a network of small businesses. And then as I started my first tech company, you know, I felt that at an even larger scale because tech allows you to have scale in a way that, you know, brick and mortar businesses or physical good businesses, you know, don't in a way. So, and so I think that that was really exciting to me. And that's when I really got, you know, really passionate about the technology space and just like using technology in order to solve problems that I've experienced and that I'm seeing other communities experience too.
Thank you so much. Ryan, I'm going to come to you and I want to underline something you said in your introduction. You said we were a 10-year overnight success. Let's go back to the beginning of that 10-year overnight journey. What inspires you to start Telesign?
Yeah, I think like what inspired me, I should just even back me before that to get into like being an entrepreneur and starting something. I grew up, I always joke like as part of a dentist dynasty. My dad was a dentist. His dad was a dentist. His dad was a dentist. And I don't know if they had dentists before then, but if they did, they were probably also dentists. And so like, from an early age, like I was just kind of exposed to that profession. And I think like what's interesting in that profession is like I was always drawn to not like sticking my head in someone's mouth, but like the business aspects of it and kind of like all the like parts of like managing practice and managing people and building something. And so that was always something that like kind of attracted me and drew me from a pretty young age. And I was quite fortunate actually to like get connected into an incubator while I was in college. And that's where we started Telesign. And to this day, I'm like really grateful and fortunate that I kind of took that plunge at a young age and while in college. And I would love to think that if I had taken a different route that I would have come back to starting something, but just was like extremely fortunate to be able to start something while young without having like other responsibilities, you know, not, you know, being able to survive off of a pretty much no salary. So kind of feel very fortunate from a timing perspective. And I think similar to some of the other panelists, like feel like kind of like lucky and that things kind of happened a little bit for me, but I think more broadly than that, I just love building things. I love like growing companies and the connections and like the people that you can help grow and take along that journey. So that's why I'm still in it and still love doing it to this day.
Thanks so much. And Chen, coming to you with the same question, can you remember 4 companies back to that beginning?
So I'm 100% with Laurel. When I thought that all my life I'll be in the corporate world. Loved it. Never thought in my life that I would become an entrepreneur. I'm not like the stories with, oh my God, I sold lemonade in this lemonade stand since I was 10. Not at all. I was fine. And then in 2012, when 4 founders approached me and said, oh, we have this idea, mobile, and mobile was just booming with the advertising. My husband told me, you know, I read about mobile. It's going to be the next thing. Well, you know, why not to give it a chance? And it turned out well. Now I understand that I was lucky enough, it was to be in the right place, the right time, but then I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the pace. As I told you, I was a runner before. I loved building things from scratch. Out of my 70 employees, 70% were women, 90% of my management were women, and I didn't even mean it to be like this, but I felt that I have a mission, and it became like a mission. And I agree with a lot of things that people say. It's amazing to see how common ground, like how many items going on we have around here, because it's true. And I love changing things, and I love the fact that I see it grow from nothing to something. And I think that that's what drives me. And after the first time, I couldn't go back. I thought about it for a minute. I have to say the truth. I did think about it. I was like, oh my God, maybe I should go to corporate again because it's so convenient. And I'm like, no, I cannot do it. And now I never think about it, and I'm happy where I'm at, and I love it. But I have to say something, that every time when I build a business from scratch, I'm enjoying it more and more, because I know that later on it becomes challenging, and manage employees, it's like bigger problem, bigger and more challenges thing. And I'm enjoying every moment now.
I love that. For those of you listening in, whether it's live or you're listening into our recording, hopefully the founders on the call, the backs of their knees are sweating right now. And you're feeling the energy, that entrepreneurial pull, but it's not all. And I think Chen just started to allude to this. It's not all easy on the journey, even if you have the vision of where you want to go. And so I'm going to ask each of you now for a lesson you learned on that founder path that you wish you knew at the start, that today, when you start something new you have in your pocket, that you can impart on our audience. And I'm going to come to you first, Tanya.
Oh my gosh, so many lessons. I think, I mean, honestly, like being prepared to be uncomfortable, to do things that you've never done before is a muscle that, you know, I've had to exercise from a young age. And it's been useful for me in my entrepreneurial journey, because when you're starting something new, especially if it's something that's category defining or very different from what exists currently, there's going to be people that are going to doubt you. There's going to be people that are going to impose their opinions on you and say things so confidently and try to put doubts into your head. And so I think it's really, really important to be discerning on who you get advice from, taking that advice as an input, not as truth, and really deciding for yourself what the truth is and trusting your gut in that way. That has been the biggest lesson for me, because there are so many people that will say things with a straight face, with the most confidence, and actually not really know what they're talking about. And so I think really internalizing that and like really being discerning on like who you take advice from, I think is really, really important, especially if you're doing something new and innovative, because that's just the nature of it. They're not going to believe in it. And like doing something for the first time is maybe the most challenging thing, because like even for my last company was a perfect example. There were people that like would say so confidently, like, there's no factories left in the United States. There's over 1 million factories in the United States. Like that is factually wrong. But they will say that, right? And they'll say things like that. And so I think that like really being able to trust your gut is like one of the biggest lessons.
Thank you so much. Ryan, over to you. What's a lesson that you wish that you knew at the beginning that you can impart on our audience?
Yeah, mine is a little bit more about like the mental grind of it. And I think for me, I look back at probably like the 4 or 5 most like difficult moments or the biggest challenges, or those days that I went home and had like a giant pit in my stomach. Every single one of those a year later was transformative for a positive reason. It forced me to go do something differently. It forced me to think about a problem set that I hadn't before, forced me to move on from like, you know, a member of the team or make really tough decisions. And so I think like looking back, like the the piece I wish I knew is that those moments are really, really important, and in this kind of a sick way, you need to embrace them and know that those really kind of challenging moments, those moments you feel really, really down, they can lead to really transformational, like important, positive change. And that's something like I still, to this day now doing it a second time, like I try to remind myself, and sometimes even knowing that it's still hard, but just knowing that those like tough moments lead to things great if you kind of keep that in mind.
It's great. Chen, coming over to you. What's your lesson for our audience?
Okay, so as everyone said, we have a lot, but I wanted to think about one thing that the audience can think and actually take it with them. And I will speak about the cap table. General terms, cap table. Then when I think that a lesson is that not doing 50-50 with the founder, with your partner. I think that some people maybe will disagree with me, but I think that it's one lesson that I learned with my third company, and I actually dissolved it because of it, and then building it from scratch, because I think that it's a huge mistake, huge mistake.
So Chen, could you, for our audience that may be completely new to startup and funding altogether, can you explain the capitalization table, the cap table, what it is, and why that was a mistake that you feel is really important to impart? Because I agree, it's an important topic to understand the control of a company.
So you have two questions here. So let's talk about the capitalization table, the cap table. Cap table matters a lot. It matters when you need to make a decision. It matters when you want to raise money. You need to have a reasonable cap table. If you have 50-50, and if you disagree with how the company needs to move forward, you have two options. One, to agree, and two, to dissolve the company. And that's it. You cannot do anything else. Now, I can also talk about the capitalization with my second company. I did have a huge mistakes there, because one of the investor had 40% of the company, and it was really hard for us to raise our A round. And we got a term sheet, but they told us, you need to recap it if you want our money. And it's possible to recap. You go through a board resolution, and there are many ways. But again, you need to think, do you have majority in your board? Which is another lesson that you need to make sure. So there are a lot of small, it's not very small, but it's small when you start a company, because you don't even think about a board majority or the cap table. You're like, oh, I'll fix it, it will be okay. No, talk to other entrepreneurs that they had issues, and find out how to do it right. And even if you don't do it right, know the consequences for later on, and don't be surprised. I think I knew a little bit the consequences because my lawyer told me that, but I was like, it will be okay. And it was a huge mistake for me.
Thank you very much, Chen. Laurel, I'm going to come to you, and I'm going to ask for two things. I'm going to put you on the spot for a moment, a VC perspective on what a cap table is and why it's relevant in the funding decision. And then I'll let you answer the original question.
Yes. So cap table, to Chen's point, as it relates to the makeup of the founding team, is critical from a decision-making perspective. But in our opinion, the cap table is equally, if not more important, when you're out raising money, which Chen also mentioned. A cap table is really who's investing in the company, at what levels, what their positions are, et cetera. My response to this question is always, not all money is smart money, right? I think people, especially new founders that are going after their first rounds, whether that's friends and family seed or a priced round, they see dollar signs in their eyes and they get so excited about the money, and they can raise money from people who, again, to Chen's point, have too much control over the company, or who aren't mission or vision aligned with where the company wants to go. So in my opinion, it's really about understanding what smart money means for your particular cap table. And then to answer the second question, I mean, Ryan hit it on the head. I totally agree with what he said. But for me, I think, well, to Ryan's point, I just want to point out, like, everything is in flux, everything is in change, good or bad. So you can't attach or try and detach from anything in your business life. You can learn the lessons, but know that everything is in flux and everything is fluid. So to get so upset about something tomorrow, you won't think about it. To get so excited about something tomorrow, you won't think about that either. So it's, for me, it's about creating equanimity in how you deal with the day-to-day influx of stress or exciting moments. For me, the really big lesson that I learned early on was about team and about how putting people first is really the only way to build a successful company. I'm a pretty aggressive personality. People kind of either love me or hate me. And I built my team around that energy. And as we scaled really quickly, I realized that I was kind of leading with an iron fist instead of really understanding what the needs of my team were as we grew, because it changes as you grow to a bigger team. And one day I realized that I was waking up and I didn't want to go into the office. I was like, so that pit of your stomach feeling that Ryan was mentioning. And I was like, F this, pardon my French. If this is my company, I need to make this a place where I want to show up and go to work every day. So I went into every single person on my team that day and I said, are you happy here? And almost every single person on my team said no. And I said, okay, well, let's figure out a way to exit you and find someone to take over this role that's going to be happy and excited to be here, because I want to show up and work here and be joyful and happy in the work that I do. And you should be as well. So let's figure this shit out and everyone can move on with their lives on to something bigger, better, or different. So to me, the biggest lesson is about really listening to your people, making sure that there's joy in your everyday work. Now, that doesn't mean every day is going to be exciting and fear-free, but I think I don't want to show up in a place that doesn't excite me, that I don't feel passionate about, and that my team is misaligned. So to me, it's people first.
Thank you all so much. It's incredible to hear your candor. Right? These are, for our viewers, true leaders. True leaders can acknowledge that fear and confidence can coexist and are a part of that startup journey. So if you're listening in, I want you to take that moment and listen to the authenticity with which they shared a struggle on that path to success, because it is not all a smooth road, no matter how confident, no matter how right the plan, and no matter how good the energy feels. So as you're thinking about it, that's the lesson learned. Not all lessons are about what to avoid or moments of struggle. Sometimes lessons are just very pragmatic in terms of advice. And so, Ryan, I'm going to come to you first. And I'm just going to ask, if a startup founder had 3 minutes to chat with you and asked, give me a piece of advice. What should I know as I start this journey? What's your go-to piece of advice?
Yeah, I think since the question is framed as like to aspiring startup founders, my answer would actually just be like to go do it. And I think it's actually never been easier to go start a company, to have access to global talent, to like have access to like technology that enables you to like go test a product and go get customer feedback. And so I think the one thing, like when I'm talking to aspiring founders and they tell me their idea, the first thing I say is like, why haven't you done it yet? Or like, what's stopping you? And that's really kind of like where I push is like, oh, go out there and go test it. And it's just never been easier to go get feedback on a product, or go test something, or go reach out to the smartest people on the planet and get good advice and hear from them. And so that would be like kind of my first reaction when I see the question about aspiring startup founders. But beyond that, like I can nerd out about like culture and the importance of building a strong culture, being able to evolve very quickly, constantly listening to like customers. So probably a dozen other things I'd love to nerd out here. But since the question asks about aspiring founders, my first reaction is just to go do it and get feedback and evolve and make it happen.
Thanks, Ryan. Chen, I'm coming to you. As you think about this, what's the advice you offer to aspiring startup founders?
As I used to be a runner, I ran 400 hurdles, and 400 hurdles has 10 hurdles. And in order to get to the 10th hurdles, you have 9 hurdles. And what I always give, I understand that as an entrepreneur, we need to be crazy, we need to be visionaries. I understand that. But in order to start somewhere and actually make things happen, you need to think small also. And small wins help a lot to your confidence. And I believe that when you have small wins, it helps you to think big and actually make it work. So I think that that's my advice.
Thank you so much, Chen. Laurel, I'm coming to you next. What's your advice?
I have two. One is, to Chen's point, celebrate those small wins, right? So we have such stars in our eyes about entrepreneurship and what a sexy thing this is. It's not that sexy. It's really friggin' hard. And it's a grind, but it's also really, again, joyful and exciting. And you get these moments where you're like, yes, I did this thing. But even the small wins are so important. So I try and call my team out and really validate their successes and celebrate them, because I think we as entrepreneurs, I know we move those goalposts, we move those hurdles all the time. We're like, yeah, we did that, but we got to get something else done. We did this, but now we've got to do this times 10. So I think celebrating the small wins is really important. And the other one, because I sit on a lot of different boards and I do a lot of coaching, et cetera, is everyone is faking it all the time. So don't let anyone intimidate you. Do you think I know how to run a VC? I'm figuring it out. That's not my background or my education. Well, it's a little education, but I'm doing it anyways. Like Ryan said, I'm just going out and I'm doing it and I'm figuring it out. And everyone in every industry is figuring it out a little bit and faking it until they really make it. So don't let anyone intimidate you.
Wonderful. Tanya, coming to you.
Yeah, I love all of the advice that was shared already. One thing that I'll add, and I think it's similar to Ryan's point, that it's never going to be the right time. I'm always like, I meet entrepreneurs and they're like, oh, I'm going to do it after this or after this or after that. And honestly, like, it's never going to feel like the right time. You're never going to feel ready. Like, there's never going to be anyone that's going to give you permission and say like, okay, now is the time. Like, that's never going to happen. So just do something like now, like if you have an idea, like literally do it today. Like start with like whatever, wherever you can start today. I think to Chen's point, like whether that's like writing down, literally starting to write down the idea, writing down the potential name, writing down the plan, and then set milestones for yourself on like, okay, by this date, I'm going to launch it, or by this date, I'm going to do XYZ, because that way you can keep yourself accountable. I think that often always, like, especially if you are used to working in a structured environment, you have to give yourself that structure. You have to give yourself that playbook. Like there is no playbook that exists. And there's going to be a lot of conflicting advice as well. So you have to decide for yourself how you want to build your business and in what vision and what you want to contribute to the world and how that's going to play out. So that's how I'll end my piece of advice.
Well, this is an incredible beginning to the conversation. And I want to just emphasize before we open it up to audience questions that there are many incredible ideas. Startup founders are often solving problems that they have a relationship to, that they've experienced in some way, and identify an opportunity. The difference is that startup greatness begins when you start up. You have to Ryan's point, step out and evaluate if there's a total attainable market, if there's a world where other people feel that same passion for the problem you're solving, that there's a connection that they're willing to buy the solution that you're creating for that problem. So as you're thinking about launching a startup and going after it, really encourage you to validate the idea, validate that there are other people. And so before we open it up to the audience questions, I'm going to ask Ryan, and I'm going to ask all of the panelists to spend a minute on something Ryan mentioned. He said, there's never been a better time to launch a startup, to be able to seek great advice from the smartest people in the world, to be able to weigh in on that. So if you had an idea, not the startup you're working on today, but a new idea that you wanted to validate, what would that first milestone be? What would you do to test that idea in the market? And Ryan, I'll come to you first.
Yeah, so I have a little bit of a bias in this one. And you may get some contradictory advice, maybe even on the panel, but I don't think really any advice now is like totally so novel that you should be worried about sharing it with others and getting feedback on it. And oftentimes I talk to founders and they're like, well, I'm hesitant to talk about it or get advice on it because I don't want someone else to go do it. Like actually doing it is the harder part. The idea is like quite simple. And so I to this day, like if I want, like I really enjoy reaching out to people and just asking for advice or asking for 15 minutes to like pick their brain. When you reach out to someone, you're not trying to sell them something, but you're like playing to their ego a bit, playing to like the fact that you really respect them, and maybe you can point out like a specific example. I find my response rate in doing that is actually really quite high. And being able to reach out to experts in a category and get advice or solicit feedback when I'm not trying to sell them something, I really just respect their opinion and respect their background and credibility. So that's probably where I would start. I think depending on the type of business that you're launching, I have a bunch of other ideas, and feel free to reach out directly, and I'm happy to kind of nerd out on this topic. But like I've seen friends that are wanting to launch like products, and they're literally buying AdWords and seeing if people will actually like go click it and then click a link to like go buy it, and they don't even have the product to sell yet. So that's just kind of one example. And I think there are lots of different ways to go test products and get advice and feedback, but happy to nerd out if anyone wants to reach out directly as it relates to like your specific idea.
Thanks so much, Ryan. Tanya, do you want to weigh in on this one at all?
Yeah, I love the beginning phases of this. To be honest, the way that I like to test ideas is to, I think to Ryan's point, to start talking to people, but I kind of do that naturally. I'm always just telling people what ideas I have and just like sharing, and I'm always like thinking about something, but then beyond that, and like I think that I guess I don't really consider that the very first step. I consider like the first step, like taking action on that, like actually trying to sell it to someone. So I really feel like that's like the best way to validate, because at the end of the day, if someone, like, for example, if I were to want to start like a shrooms retreat, right? And like for like a psilocybin retreat or something like that, like the way that I would do that is like, I first tell a few people, like kind of get their feedback in real time. And then I would say like, if they're like, oh yeah, like I'd be like, oh, okay, do you want to sign up? And then like, this is like, how much would you pay for it? And then if they say that, then I would start validating and actually like collecting credit cards and things like that. And I feel like that's sometimes the best way to like actually see if like someone will pay for something, but it really depends on the type of business that you're creating, right? Like there's like security, there's just a ton of like businesses. So I would say like, think about like your idea and what would make you feel the most secure and like continuing to invest in that idea, whether that's the feedback or whether that's someone like putting down a credit card or signing up for a wait list. In my experience, wait lists are kind of like they're not great indications of interest, because I find that people don't convert very well from a wait list, and it's easy for people to forget and like give their email. And so to be honest, like I know that wait lists are so popular nowadays, but like I personally prefer to like put something in front of people that's real, that they can actually sign up for. So that's kind of my 2 cents on that.
I love this. I'm going to depart from our normal structure. I'm going to acknowledge that what you just heard for our audience is examples of solutioning. And the difference is spending time just ideating, thinking about the problem, going out and buying a domain, but never executing and soliciting customer feedback is a barrier that a lot of founders, a lot of entrepreneurs have to starting a startup. So when you start, you really want to go out and you want to begin to think about the elements required to create a sustainable business. So thinking about a tool you can use, one really simple tool to validate the business is something called a lean canvas. And it's available on public domain under Strategizer. We'll share it, and we've shared it in the past. But it's really nice because it helps you think about who you're serving. It helps you think about the business model. It helps to think about the product itself. It helps to think about channel partners, pricing, the moat, the elements that make a business viable. And that's one very quick way. That said, we're going to open it up now to some audience questions, going all the way back old school with a notepad and pencil. Anybody who's live on our call today have a question, you can indicate that you have a question by raising your hand. And Max, I'm going to come to you first. Feel free to unmute your mic and ask your question live.
Yes, thank you very much. I have a startup called Gambit Labs with my co-founder, who's female, and right now the ownership is 50-50. Does that count as like a female-owned thing, or should I give her like at 51% to sort of like qualify?
I can take this one.
Great.
Well, I think to Chen's point earlier, that's a dangerous place to be. So let's not do 50-50. Also, there are so many opportunities from a diversity perspective. There are platforms like WeBank that allow you to get certifications only if you're 51% or more female or diverse owned. So I would say double click and lean in on that. So from a management strategy perspective, probably not great to have 50-50. From an ownership perspective, yes, it would count as female owned because it's 50%. But I think from a marketing perspective, I would want to give her at least an extra % or 2 so that you would qualify for some of the other certifications that will get you in the door from some of these bigger corporates that have diversity and minority spend requirements. That would be my approach.
Thank you so much. I will give her 1% then.
Awesome. You heard it here first.
It's public.
Yep.
I love this question. I'm going to underline one additional thing, because if you were seeking funding from a fund like ours, it's not just enough for the capitalization table to reflect ownership, but also the operating model. Is she truly operating the business? Is she part of the pitch? Is she going to be instrumental in an element of taking the business to the next level? Is another threshold that many specifically emerging impact funds are going to seek. And so as you're planning and thinking about fundraising and how the company will operate, I do encourage you to make sure that the way that you build the culture of your company also reflects that ownership perspective and not just the adjustment on the cap table.
Yeah, your point, Kelly, is it can't just be performative, 100%.
Absolutely. Okay, additional questions live from our audience. You can also feel free to add to the chat. Kayla, I will ask you to take a look at the chat and see if we have any offline questions. I did see a hand go up. So if you had raised your hand, please keep it in the air. We're just going through the audience.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any in the chat, so I think we can go to Eric, see that he has a question.
Great, thank you.
Hello, I actually have a few questions, if that's okay.
Let's start with your first and see how it goes.
First, I would like to say thank you, everyone, for sharing insight with your startups and how it progressed over time. I'm actually in the process of beginning my own startup, but this is like a very new territory to me. So it was very informative and helpful. So thank you, everyone, for sharing your insights. My first question would be, during the beginning phases of creating your startups, what picked you up / motivate you to keep going when you ran across an obstacle that was very challenging or difficult?
Tanya, I see you nodding your head. How about you take this one first?
I think, there's so many difficult moments throughout everything. So I think that one of the things, I have a whole process of like grounding and everything. So Martini, that's funny. To be honest, my go-to is like talking to customers and like kind of remembering the purpose and like that things that are working. And I think that that's what motivates me the most in that. And I think that beyond that, I invest a lot in like therapy, coaching, meditation, and like all of these things. So I think that I think that that's sort of the process, but I think like everyone comes up with their own formula to stay steady and to make it through some of those moments.
Thank you very much. Does anybody else want to weigh in on that? It's a really important topic, that idea of founder resilience in tough times.
I can jump in just for a moment. I think for me, I was very lucky to have co-founders, and for me, that was like a huge piece of getting through those like really challenging moments. But the other way I kind of lean on it is just being part of like CEO groups with other CEOs and founders of companies. Running a company is extremely lonely. Like you can't like go talk to your team about all of your challenges or every tough moment that you have, because it just wouldn't be appropriate. And you have to kind of put on that face and put on that smile. And the analogy I always make is when I'm flying on a plane and we hit a rough patch of turbulence, I always look at the flight attendants, and usually if they're calm and the pilot's calm on the overhead, and I'm calm. But I think one time in my life I was on a flight and the flight attendant was freaking out and I was freaking out. And so I think you have to like be able to put on a really good face for the team as you start building a team. And so for me, just having like other CEOs and other people that I can build relationships with and talk through those tough moments, building that rapport before that tough moment was important, so that I can lean on them when those tough moments happen.
Great. Laurel or Chen, this is an important topic. I'll open it up to you as well.
I 100% agree. I think that in general, you need to be a positive person. You need to think positive. I think that being an athlete helped me a lot, because you can train your brain to think positive even when it's hard and when you go to sleep, and like sometimes you don't know how you're going to pay salary like later on, and you need to think, and you need to take a paper and a pen and think positive, but also realistic. This is how I'm going to go through it. 1, 2, 3. And I also agree with what Ryan said. Another thing that I learned, I was really lonely with my first startup. It was in 2012. It wasn't very common. All the Facebook group and all the WhatsApp group and all people didn't talk. I was really lonely. I felt that even though I had 4 founders and they were amazing and we talked to everyone and we were really open, I still felt lonely. And what I learned is that I'm going to have a really solid environment around me with other either female founders or male founders, that they go through it together with me, and it helps a lot. Even yesterday, I called a friend that is a CEO. It's his third company, and I told him, oh my God, I'm having a hard time because of this, and this. And we talked through it, and he helped me. It's very important. And I also really agree with Tanya that I go and work out. And I found out that when I go and run outside, it helps me. And I just found the right formula for me. And sometimes it depends on the stage of the company. I have a different formula when I start a business. I have a different formula when I have customers. And then when I have a lot of employees and I need to go to the growth stage, I have a different formula for that. And it's okay. I don't know. That's my 2 cents.
It's incredible. Thank you.
So I was a little tongue in cheek. I put martinis in the chat. I actually do believe that martinis help solve a lot of problems. But it's about routine, right? I wake up, I drink a big glass of water to jumpstart my system before my coffee. I gratitude journal. I work out 5 days a week. I try and have a really consistent routine because it's all about training, to Chen's point again. I think gratitude is probably one of the most important practices as an entrepreneur that you can have, because then you're taking yourself out of your current stressful situation and you're realizing that like in this moment, I'm actually really great, right? I have everything I need. I have food on the table. I have a roof over my head. I have friends and family that love me. So having a practice of gratitude to me has been a game changer.
That's incredible. Eric, I'm going to come back to you and give you a chance to ask one follow-up question.
Oh man, this is hard. I have to choose one. Okay. Because Ryan and Chen kind of talk a little bit on top of the question that I actually had. One of the questions I had after, I would say my question would be, when would you know is the right time to try adding more people on into the startup if you're doing a solo startup? I kind of have the thought process that I would want to have like a stable type of startup before adding on a few people's onto the team. So like, what are your guys' opinion on that?
I agree. A lot of times we think to hire someone to help us with the sell, like with the sell process. And I made this mistake with my second company, because at the end of the day, we sell our business the best. We are the best salesperson. And only after we know how to do it, then we have a plan and we know what we need. Now, as a sole founder, it's a little bit tricky because you do everything. So it's tough because you do need an R&D team, or you do need like an engineer. You do. First of all, I encourage to find a co-founder. I found it very helpful. But if it's your own choice, it's totally fine. But maybe to find someone to share with what you feel. But I do want to say something about the salesperson. Don't rush into it, because you are the best salesperson for your business. That's how I see it.
I'm going to pause before anybody else answers, because I have a feeling this is a topic where we may have differing opinions. And this is one of the things that's most amazing about startup culture and entrepreneurship, is that so much depends on the industry vertical that you're solving problems in, the type of business that you're planning to launch, are you selling a consumer packaged good or a B2B product, or are you selling a technical solution? So thinking about the startup that you're founding is going to really impact some of the answers. But what I want you to listen for is how our speakers respond based on their expertise, based on their experience. There's a lot of solutioning that comes from their experience. And so with that said, I'm going to open it up and give room for anybody to respond to Eric's question.
I can chime in just real briefly. I think the answer is like, I have no idea, because I don't know what your company is and all the circumstances, but I think the things that I'd like kind of reflect on are like in an early stage, like there are very few roles that require like a full-time resource. And there's so many ways now to get like contractor help or to use Upwork to find like a very specific path. And so I think to the degree you can like look at obviously like leveraging external resources in different ways, or leveraging software to try to solve what you're trying to do, I would look at that first before like really feeling the need to hire someone full time. But I think to Kelly's point, like I don't know, you would know better than me, like based off like your specific circumstances, and there's probably 100 different factors that would change my answer on this.
Anybody want to take it more broadly? So I'll open it up to Laurel or Tanya. If we talk about making the move, we heard from each of you throughout today's talk about how you manage a company differently at different points of inflection in the company's growth. So thinking as a leader about how to transition or to think about team differently depending on the stage of the company. Do you have a response in that area?
I've always hired consultants to do the things that I am not best at. So when I was having that initial challenge with some of my team, it was because there was an age gap, frankly. They were a lot of millennials and I didn't care about their feelings enough, right? And I also didn't want to care about their feelings. So I ended up hiring a millennial whisperer to talk to them, understand what they were going through and all of their emotional pieces, and come back to me with the solutioning side of it to say, like, this is what you need to do in terms of actionable next steps to keep your team happy, right? So I think hiring out for the skill sets that are not your core competencies, really, really valuable and important. And then if you're like early stage and you have needs in terms of like technical, et cetera, that's when you might want to hire have a technical co-founder or something along those lines. But I think for me, I've always been a sole founder, I'm a sole GP. I like moving fast and I don't like asking people for permission. So I just want to go forward quickly. I've learned that I do need people to surround me that can slow me down, because I'm always going to be the gas pedal and I need brake pedals around me to help balance me out.
What an incredible analogy. Tanya, I'm going to come to you. Final thoughts on this question.
Yeah, I think that I always come back to this feeling of like, it's not the time it takes to build a company, it's the time, the energy it takes to build a company, and like the will that you have to bring it into existence, right? It's not actually the time that you allot for it. So I think about that a lot, and I think about the people. So I really like to surround myself with people that give me more energy and that like contribute, and that, there are people on my team that are more containers and like try to slow me down. I think to Laurel's point, or frankly are just more methodical in that, where I'm more of an expander. I'm just always going to want to do more and more and more. And so I did know that about myself. So I spent about 6 months looking for a technical co-founder, and I treated it like a recruitment process, because I really wanted someone in the trenches with me that had the technical expertise. And so I treated it like a recruitment process. I actually started a dinner series for technical women in the Bay Area as a way to get to know people. And then I had like a co-founder questionnaire with like 50 questions on like, are we aligned? Are we, are we going to be on the same page? Can I build with this person? Can I get basically married to this person? And then we also had a small project that we did together prior to making that full commitment. And then from there, we hired contractors. I really like doing contract to hire as a way to get to know people. And then we also honestly hired people that we knew that we had worked with in the past, because we know what to expect. You kind of know their vulnerabilities, you can be honest with one another and you can kind of speak the same language. And so that allowed us to move much faster, because we had already had that rapport with people. So with the people on our team. So that was my approach, but it changes at every single stage. And you just have to like be very dynamic and responsive and just practical with like what you need and honest with yourself on like what you need and what your team needs.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you to all of our incredible speakers today. This has been a highly impactful session. I'm going to hand it over to you, Kayla, to conclude us. If you've been listening in, each of the incredible panelists that joined me today is on LinkedIn. Please do follow them. Please learn from what they've been doing. They have incredible careers, and don't hesitate to reach out to me as well. I'm Kelly O'Cares on Twitter, and I'm on LinkedIn, and I host Business Bites on a regular basis. Over to you, Kayla.
Okay, thank you. So thank you so much to all of our speakers for taking out time of your day to speak with us. This is really such an insightful conversation, hearing about your entrepreneurial journeys. And I'm sure that everyone who tuned in today completely agrees that this was an incredibly valuable session as well. So before we wrap things up, I will be dropping the feedback survey into the chat box below. And then, if possible, please take a moment to just fill that out super quick, and it will definitely help us improve our future sessions. And then lastly, here are our links to our Instagram, so you all can stay up to date about any future events that come up. And with that, I hope all of you have a great rest of your day, and thank you so much for attending this session.